All right, so you sent over this YouTube video, and it's about Trump's health.
Okay.
During the 2020 elections.
Right.
And it's making some pretty bold claims.
Yeah.
Something about chairs.
Yeah, so the video really focuses on this idea that Trump was concealing health issues from the public during the campaign.
Okay.
And they use this whole thing about Trump not wanting to sit in certain chairs.
Okay.
Potentially because he was afraid of falling.
Right.
As like a jumping off point to discuss his fitness for office.
So they're saying like, hey, if he can't even handle a chair, how can he handle the country?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of ties into this larger trend, I think, of distrust in institutions and voters increasingly expecting more transparency.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to matters that could, like, directly impact a president's ability to lead.
Right. So it's not just about one guy and his, like, health issues. It's about the public's right to know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And the video doesn't stop at chairs.
Oh, really?
It goes on to suggest potential cognitive decline, even alleging public incontinence.
Whoa.
These are very serious accusations, and they back them up with clips from Trump's speeches and rallies.
Okay, so what kind of evidence are we even talking about here?
Wow.
Are we talking doctor's notes or?
No, they're relying heavily on observational evidence.
Okay.
Things like moments where Trump seems confused or struggles to find the right words or like goes off on tangents during these speeches.
So like that clip where he mixes up the election date.
Yes.
He says January 5th instead of November.
Exactly.
Which I gotta admit, I chuckled when I saw that. I mean, we've all had those like brain fart moments, but on a national stage, that's gotta sting a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of the examples that they highlight and plays into this larger narrative they're constructing about his mental acuity.
Okay.
They even go so far as to compare some of his behaviors to, like, symptoms of frontotemporal dementia.
Wait, really? Isn't that a little bit of a reach?
It is a bit of a reach, and it's important to note that they're not medical professionals. The video doesn't actually offer a medical diagnosis.
Okay.
They use language like symptoms and signs.
Okay.
Which leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
So they're raising doubts about his cognitive abilities, but they're also kind of pointing to like a lack of transparency.
Exactly.
And that combination is really like fueling the fire here.
Yeah.
Because the video makes a really big deal out of the fact that Trump refused to release his medical records in detail.
Right. And it plays into this idea that politicians are hiding something right.
Yeah.
It taps into existing anxieties about who to trust.
Which, let's be honest, is a pretty common sentiment these days, regardless of your political leanings.
Sure.
But not releasing detailed medical records? I mean, was that unusual for a presidential candidate?
Well, I think there's been a growing expectation for that level of transparency when it comes to a president's health.
Right.
Whether it's fair or not, like not releasing those records definitely raises questions. Even if there's nothing to hide, it feeds into that suspicion that the video is building. And they actually touch on that expectation of transparency in another segment.
Okay.
About a supposed medical emergency.
Okay.
At one of Trump's rallies.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Where they show that footage of something happening in the crowd.
Exactly.
And then they zoom in on Trump's reaction.
Yeah, they juxtapose this moment of potential vulnerability.
Okay.
Someone needing medical attention at his rally.
Right.
With Trump's response, which some might interpret as lacking empathy.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to frame it in a way that makes you question his character.
Yeah.
Maybe even his ability to, like, handle a crisis.
Yeah.
Like, they're trying to create a narrative about who he is as a person.
Right.
Rather than focusing on, like, the facts of his health.
Yeah, it's a subtle but effective tactic.
Okay.
Especially when you're dealing with a figure who's already as polarizing as Trump.
Uh-huh.
People are much more likely to interpret information in a way that confirms their existing beliefs.
Okay, but then the video goes totally left field.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, out of nowhere, they bring up Adolf Hitler.
This is where the video really goes for the jugular, rhetorically speaking.
Okay.
They try to draw a parallel between Trump and Hitler.
Okay.
Focusing on historical accounts of Hitler's digestive issues.
Wait, for real.
Yeah.
Digestive issues.
Yeah.
What are they even trying to imply with that?
Right.
Like, what does that even mean?
They suggest there's this pattern
Okay.
of authoritarian leaders having gastrointestinal problems.
Okay.
They even pull out an article about Hitler's supposed flatulence and dietary habits.
So it's classic reductio ad Hitlerum.
It is.
Reductio ad what now?
It's basically a fallacy.
Okay.
Where you try to discredit someone's actions or character,
Right.
comparing them to Hitler,
Okay.
which is often very effective because, well,
Right, because having a stomachache doesn't automatically make you a dictator.
exactly.
It's absurd when you put it like that.
Yeah.
But I can see how some people might fall for it. Sure. Especially if they're already inclined to dislike Trump.
Exactly. They're playing on existing biases and using this historical anecdote
Okay.
to further their argument about his potential health issues,
Right.
implying a connection between physical discomfort and this desire for control.
But do they provide any, like, actual evidence to support that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the video doesn't really provide a satisfactory answer.
Okay.
They don't present any scientific studies or expert analysis
Uh-huh.
to support the claim that, like, digestive issues are somehow linked to authoritarian tendencies.
So it's basically just their opinion dressed up as a historical fact. So they're basically, like, cherry-picking bits of history to fit their narrative.
Right.
That feels kind of manipulative.
It definitely raises questions about their intentions, right?
Yeah.
Like, are they genuinely concerned
Yeah.
about Trump's health and what it means for the country? Or are they trying to use these concerns to influence public opinion?
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
It feels like we've gone down this rabbit hole
Right.
of speculation and, like, historical what-ifs.
Yeah.
So where does this all leave us? What are we supposed to, like, take away from this crazy video?
I think for one, it highlights how a candidate's health, real or perceived, can become a major campaign issue,
Okay.
even when there's very little concrete evidence to go on.
Right.
And this video really exemplifies that. I mean, they use this mix of, like, suggestive editing, political commentary, and as we've discussed, these kind of tenuous historical parallels to make their case.
Yeah, it's almost like a political attack ad disguised as investigative journalism,
Right.
which is a good reminder to be critical of, like, everything we see,
Yeah.
especially during something as, like, intense as a presidential election.
Absolutely. And to think about who's presenting the information
Right.
and what their potential biases might be.
Okay.
It's easy to get caught up in a compelling narrative,
Right.
but it's important to, like, step back and ask ourselves, are they presenting a balanced perspective? Or are they just cherry-picking evidence to support a conclusion they already had?
It's like that old saying, consider the source.
Exactly.
Right.
And in today's world where information spreads so quickly online, I think it's more important than ever to be discerning about what we choose to believe.
Okay.
Don't just take things at face value.
It makes you think how much of what we saw in that video was actually about Trump's health.
Right.
And how much was just, like, political maneuvering.
Yeah.
It's a little unsettling.
It really highlights this complex interplay, I think, between health politics and public perception.
Yeah.
And this video really just scratches the surface.
Okay.
There are so many layers to this topic that we could, like, dive into.
Like what?
Well, we could explore the history of presidential health disclosures, for example, or the role of media in shaping public opinion about a candidate's fitness for office, or even some of the ethical considerations about, like, diagnosing public figures from afar.
Those are some deep dives I would love to unpack. It just goes to show there's always more to uncover, more to question, more to learn.
Absolutely.
This has been really eye-opening.
It's always a fascinating journey when we start to peel back the layers of these complex issues. So,
well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with me.
My pleasure.